Welcome back to another episode at the Adultish Advice Podcast, because we are adults-ish. And I'm Marissa.
I'm Julie.
And today we're interviewing our really good friend, Ayla Kress.
Hi.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We're really excited to have you. And we've only been doing this podcast for about a month. And after the first 4 episodes, we were like, maybe we have a theme or a topic going into it. Let's try that. So we're kind of talking a bit of business, talking about your company, maybe some struggles, advice, because we're an advice podcast. But before we do that, we should actually just talk about the name, because you actually had this URL.
Yes. So as any good entrepreneur, my hobbies include drunkenly buying URLs and domains. And a few years ago, I had the idea that I was going to be able to start a blog of my own. I was kind of an adult, so I was like, adultish advice, that works. And then nothing ever came of it. And I think, a few months ago, we were sitting working on some women in music projects.
Yes, ma'am.
And you guys were like, we can't think of a name. And
All of ours were taken.
My URL is about to expire. Can I just transfer it to you? You want it? It's adultish advice. So worked out quite serendipitously.
Yes.
I know. So thank you for giving us our name.
Much.
Thank you for using it and putting it to good use.
It was fate and meant to be. We'll send royalties to you for that name claim.
Yeah, we'll work out this pub deal a little bit later.
Well, why don't we dive in? At the end, we do a little tradition. We've done it once, but it's going to be a tradition where we'll do some rapid fire. So then we'll find out some fun things about you, where you grew up, stuff like that. But right now, will you tell us the name of your company, maybe how you came to that name, and what you guys do?
Perfect. The name of my company is Brain Candy Management. We are an integrated marketing and artist management firm. We came to that name, I did when I was in grad school, actually at Syracuse University, receiving my master's in audio arts. And my grad professor was talking about Neves, a specific type of preamp that I'm a huge fan of.
We were just talking about.
Which we were just talking about. I was just obsessing over the ones in the studio. And he had turned to me, Abbott, James Abbott is his name. He turned to me and he goes, "Oh, Kress, isn't this just your brain candy?" And I was like, "Yes, sir, it is." And then I went forward and I created an LLC. And a few weeks later, I went back to Abbott and I go, "Abbott, I got to admit something. I stole your words, stole your name." And still to this day, we tell that story very fondly. He was a audio engineering professor for both myself and my co-founder, Tony Chiarella. So he had a big impact on us.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's you and Tony.
Yep, Tony Chiarella. I started the business originally, and he was my first main client. And then we realized we worked really, really well together, and we still to this day work hand in hand on most projects that we do.
And just to dive in, because I want to ask what gave you the idea, what kind of need you saw, but what you have is a very unique company. There's a lot of management companies here. There's some digital companies people help and contract in. Can you explain like the combination and what makes like your company unique?
Yeah. So when we were in grad school, our cohort had really started to notice that things were changing in the industry and that large-scale labels, the big majors, weren't as agile and weren't able to keep up with the disruption that was reoccurring. Another thing that I studied deeply throughout undergrad and grad school was trend spotting in entrepreneurship. So identifying these different trends in industries and figuring out what was going to be happening next. So I saw the disruption that was caused by streaming and our industry not being prepared for it, and how much it was helping DIY artists. But then I also noticed a correlation in overhead that majors had, and that they weren't able to be as agile. They weren't willing to maybe make risks as some investors that I had learned a lot from were. So I wanted to kind of create a business that changed the definition of management, because managers in today's day and age do so much more than what managers did in the, in the original era of like the 1970s rock and roll manager. Like We don't get to, fly around on the planes and hang out and,
all the
and
movies.
do all of the,
The
almost
fun
famous fun stuff. It's a lot different. Like I do graphic design content
Mm-hmm.
for my artists, and it's a really great way to vertically integrate a business. And vertical integration is, to me, one of the best ways to cut down on costs, cut down on middlemen. You're not paying people that don't really need to be doing what they're doing.
And can you explain what vertical integration is for people that are listening might not know?
So vertical integration is when you integrate parts of a business, like it sounds, vertically. So in the music,
It makes so much sense.
in the music industry specifically, imagine if you're an artist and you have to record your song, and then you have to get your song to a distributor, and then you have to get it to marketing, and then you have to, do publishing and promotion and PR. So there's all these different pieces that can be spread across a bunch of different industries, but when you vertically integrate them into one streamlined process, cutting out middlemen, it's a little bit better. So I think in our industry, it's really hard to describe, but if you imagine like a paper company, if the paper company owns the forest and the trees as well as the mill that makes the paper, they save a lot more money. I feel like that's more of a tangible.
Yeah,
that's
perfect.
more tangible.
Also,
of
my
an idea.
dad works for a paper company, so that'll be super relatable when he
so
listens.
So does
Companies?
my dad.
What?
Yes.
Do you guys have the same dad?
Oh my god.
Are you my sister?
I mean, we do kind of look like
I
you
could
are.
see it.
Kinda
You
do.
are also. You were born in Wisconsin.
I know.
So.
This is what? Dad?
We're finding it all out.
Only on this podcast.
So I have a question. So your undergrad is in audio production, engineering.
I have an undergrad degree in communication arts with an emphasis in radio, television, and film, and a double minor in entrepreneurship and digital studies.
I really wish you were smart. Like, so
I just blacked out while you're saying that.
The funny part is I was just going to go to art school when I wanted to graduate
Uh-huh.
from high school, and then I actually got into my family alma mater, Wisconsin, and I never thought I would. I was like, I'm not smart enough, and then I got
girl.
in, and I was like, oh shit,
Yeah.
yes, like I'm running with this, and I got my master's in audio arts with an emphasis in music business and studio recording.
And do you still like dabble in studio recording and all that?
Yes. I mean, when I walked in here, I was geeking
Right, I
over the
know.
equipment. So I love it. And I work a lot with artists very closely when they're in the studio, when they're doing different projects. I work with both artists and producers. So, for example, last week I was filming a video for one of my clients, Professor Fox. He does producing. He's worked with like Chance the Rapper and Vic Mensa and done some work on Mac Miller albums, R.I.P. And so every once in a while I get to go into the studio with them, and it's just it satiates that craving that I have
Sure.
for it. I love it. Yeah.
It is a fun time.
Mhm.
And it helps you too. Because I always say that, like
Yeah.
when you learn like so many different facets of the music industry,
Mm-hmm.
you can relate to your artist so much more because you see it coming from
100%.
every single direction. And it's not just that like, oh, I just stumbled into the music industry,
Mhm.
which a lot of people have, and I know this one thing.
Yeah.
But like to make that connection with your artist is so important. And I think we talked about it at a meeting once, like the entrepreneur, like in Nashville, these
Mhm.
little businesses, I say, are like taking over because the
Mhm.
artists trust these people more.
And yeah, and we build our relationships heavily on trust.
Yes.
And that's such a huge thing for us. Is
For
definitely
sure,
the trust.
for sure.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
music gets very personal.
It
You know,
really-
it's a
it's your
very-
art.
it
And then
is.
you sign
does.
these deals at these big companies because you think like,
Mhm.
this is awesome. I just
Yeah.
got signed to one of the big three. And then like 5 years later, you're completely screwed and broke and it sucks.
Yes. And a big inspiration was the Artifact documentary about 30 Seconds to Mars and their entire
Mhm.
situation that they went through with their record label. I was just heartbroken that someone was who on the outskirts of the music industry, because that was the first year that I had really ever worked in the music industry. I was touring at that time as a VIP production assistant, and to see that as someone who was so outwardly
Mhm.
successful and to
Yeah.
see what they were struggling with, an
Mhm.
artist that I think everyone had supported, bought the albums. I mean, that was huge. And to see that they were having those problems, that was a big inspiration for me to want to change what is happening in our industry and give artists back their rights, their creative rights, their
Yes.
master's rights. Brain Candy is a company. We don't touch your master's rights. It isn't ours. We didn't make it. Unless I was sitting in that room for you and literally wrote that chorus of that song, that's the only time I would ever have the audacity to ask for your master's.
That's amazing.
And that is unique. the industry for
unique.
people that aren't in the industry and wouldn't know that. It sounds like it makes sense.
Yes.
But yet there are
I
companies
think like
that
the
do
first, not the first, actually maybe the first time that people like noticed that this is the Taylor Swift fiasco and people were outraged. And it's like, I mean, because she's a bigger artist, it's nice that it brought awareness, but this happens all of the
Day
time.
in and day
Mhm.
out to artists who are huge like Taylor, who thankfully, you know, she has the legal team and the support and the financial ability to fight that and to deal with that situation. But there are so many artists
Yes.
that don't, that are in debt to their label, that can't even put food on the table and can't put a roof over their own head. But then they're, you know, you hate when the CEOs are living such a luxurious life, and then the people who are doing this nitty gritty work that are putting their souls, they're really like truly their souls. That's what music is for a lot of these people. They're putting that on the line, and I'm honored that artists trust me with that and that they want to work with me, and I hope that they see us as something different than what they normally can get from an average manager or even from a record label in that respect too.
Absolutely.
Amazing. It's amazing what you're doing.
Thank you.
So with your company, it's you and Tony, you both wear a lot of hats.
Yes.
What are some of the struggles either related to the industry or related to just being a young entrepreneur or early-ish in your company? I mean, how long have you had the company? 3 years?
We started
5?
November 1st, 2016.
Did you start it in New York or were you in Nashville?
I was in grad school in New York still.
Okay.
So I started in grad school in November just kind of as it was my thesis project, essentially. Yeah. And then I just ran with it. I kept going. Back to your point, though, about different problems and issues. I mean, how much time do we have? Obviously, money is a big thing. And making sure that artists have a sustainable revenue and income that they're able to subsist off of. I'm really sick of the starving artist. That we shouldn't have to be starving artists if you're working as diligently as any other entrepreneur. Because to me, artists are entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Their music is their own business. So if they're putting in 60 hours a week, they should be getting that back if they have that talent and they're able to write music and they have that musical ability. Not everyone sadly has that.
Right.
I don't. That's why I'm on the business side. We'll admit that one real early.
Let's just write a song. Let's just
Just
write
write
right
a
now.
song. I do write poetry, but it never comes anything. Yeah, my grandfather was a poet. Actually, is a poet.
So cool.
I know.
We're weirdos. We're quite weird. But definitely making sure that people can sustain their lifestyle, can sustain their career, for them to be not necessarily so big where they're the Taylor Swift of their genre, where they're playing arenas night after night, where they're, you know, reaching this Ariana Grande caliber or something like that. They don't necessarily have to be there. There are a lot of artists that are able to achieve a very happy and healthy lifestyle. That's beautiful, off of co-writes and some sync deals and exploring different avenues to generate revenue. So that's definitely a big thing. And also different ways to generate revenue.
Yes.
So what I do on the side, in addition to Brain Candy, I work in venture capital, and I work diligently to support businesses that add a piece of, that add to the revenue pie. So startups that can actually help artists make more money, make it easier, maybe help them cut out a middleman, that kind of thing. So I like to work a lot with startups that are helping add to the artist's revenue pie.
That's huge, because a misconception, like Julie, to your point about the labels, is I feel like that's a huge thing. People want the big management company, the big label. Once they're signed to a major, like they've made it. But I have so many friends and I know so many artists that made more when they left, or artists that never signed make more because they are putting in the work. They're booking themselves so they don't have to lose a cut every show. You know, they're doing a lot of the work on their own, saving a lot of the money, rather than having to give more away. So for them to get more money and for you to be a source that helps funnel that and gives them financial freedom so they can keep creating.
And yes, that's one of the most beautiful things about technology in our industry, is that it's really given back a lot of power to the DIY and independent artists. So you as an artist can go to hopefully just your manager, like this is essentially what we built the company around, is you can go to your manager and we can be a one-stop dream shop. So if you want to make a music video, you hit me up. and I find you're the best videographer that fits your desires for what you want this music video to be like. And so you're able to actually just go to your manager and do distribution, to
Yes.
do all different things within one place. And so thankfully, like, technology has really been a
Yes.
blessing in that, and really given back a lot of power to, I think, the DIY artists, which is who we focus
Mhm.
on serving. DIY artists, people who want to be independent. When talking to my lawyer the other day, and we were redlining essentially management contracts, like the standard management contract, read it through and through. If you're about to
Yes.
sign any contract, whether it be
sure.
working,
Please.
management, record, read it through and through.
Please.
If you don't understand something, get a lawyer.
Yep.
Call someone. Call anyone to give you advice, to help you read through it. Seek someone who is trained in this law, because I see so many artists that sign agreements and they're like, well, I didn't know I was giving away 20% of all of my investments,
Is
of
that
all
not your
of my
signature on the
income.
bottom?
Yes, and it happens so often. So
know.
the other day we were actually redlining through this with my lawyer, and he goes, well, I mean, you know, that clause that you just took out, our sunset clauses are very different than most people's. This clause that you just took out is going to, like, what happens if an artist leaves and goes to a major? And I looked at him and I go, well, I'll tell them to have fun and I'll wave goodbye, because they're going to be waving goodbye to their masters, their creative rights, to most of the things that artists truly want to maintain their ownership of. So
That's big. And I know Julian and I have talked about this before. We both worked in different roles at a management company, and that was his motto, was this should be a marriage. And if it's not right for one person or the other and they need to leave, then that's better. So he believes, just like you, of not having a contract like that. And if these artists get big, or these artists have whatever issues and they want to leave, he's like, I want that. If we can't resolve it, it's better for both that they find who they need and we have on the roster who we need. It shouldn't be a forced thing by contract.
yes,
That's huge.
110%.
You're wise beyond your years.
Oh, thanks. I'm so glad that someone who's succeeding in the music industry is doing what I'm doing. So,
Oh wait, I forgot what I was gonna ask you next. I was gonna ask you we talked about some struggles and things that people have to watch. What about, on the opposite side, advice you'd give for an independent artist, and an advice you'd give for an entrepreneur, a young entrepreneur? It can be broad or
Patience.
specific.
patience. This is something I was not born with. This is something I've been working
Same.
diligently this past year, is patience. This is not, people become, I think a lot of people see this like people becoming famous overnight. And then if you actually do some digging, you'll realize they've been producing for 10 years. They've been writing songs for 15.
Yes.
They wrote, they co-wrote 3 hits that you already know with someone else before their independent artist career actually took off.
Yes.
So I think patience is something that I've been working really hard on learning myself.
Mhm.
And I think it's extremely important. I actually was in an interview the other day, and he had kind of asked this question, and it was on the spot. And I loved what I thought of. If you could go back and like give your younger self 30 seconds of advice and you only had that time, I always tell people, plant the acorn, trust that it will grow into an oak tree, but don't forget to enjoy the view while you're standing there and watering your tree and nurturing it, because eventually it will grow. I was the weirdo that started saving for my home when I was like
I know.
5.
You're so funny.
And
I
smart.
was so weird. Like I wanted to own a home, and that was like something that meant so much to me. So I started like saving nothing essentially until I actually like started working when I was older.
Can I buy a house with $12?
Right? My parents were like, no, you can't even afford a dollhouse, dude. Jesus. Like have you seen the housing market recently?
American Girl dolls are $200.
Oh my God.
So just being patient, planting the acorn, waiting for that oak tree to grow, making sure you nurture it, but enjoy the view, like the small steps, the little wins. You have to appreciate those. Otherwise, you'll feel like you haven't succeeded at anything. And self-doubt is the most toxic thing in our industry.
I suffer from that so much.
Let's admit it.
I mean, even like if we look at like famous musicians from like the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, like before like having access to see everyone's life and what they're doing, those people were working so hard because there was no availability to go viral. There was no we have so much access to all of those things. And I think also seeing someone go viral, you're like, well, why can't I go viral? You know what I mean? Like, what do you got to do here to do things like that? And it's a weird industry now because it could be like you could upload one video, one thing on SoundCloud, and all of a sudden you take off.
And all of a sudden you take off. You can upload a 30-second clip onto TikTok and it could get hundreds of thousands of plays. And then you kind of struggle with, okay, what do we do with this virality? So it's presented a lot of new opportunities, but it's also presented a lot of new situations, as I like to call them. Just absolute situations.
Damage control
Really?
all the time.
I'm just not going to sleep for the next 2 days, and we're going to figure it out.
Yeah, next 2 weeks. No, it's been amazing. It's very interesting.
I mean, it's learning.
It's
sure.
Oh, so much.
What about Nashville is unique for your
when did you
company
come
and your
here?
success?
Oh, I fell in love with Nashville in 2013.
I fell in love with the city. I was a young girl.
I went to the farm when the farm was, it still is the farm. I went to Bonnaroo in 2013 to see Paul McCartney, Tom Petty, and Mumford & Sons with my dad, actually. But Mumford & Sons ended up being Jack Johnson because one of them got sick and he had to, they couldn't play the night. But it was absolutely amazing. I fell in love with the city. I saw a bunch of people that were doing what I wanted to do, and that trip changed my life. I walked up to one of the VIP production people and I said, "Hi, I don't know you, but I want to do what you do. Teach me everything you know." 6 months later, I came back to Nashville specifically. I hadn't gone to the city proper when I came down for Bonnaroo, but 6 months later, I came down here to work Bass Nectar's New Year's Eve show, actually. So 2013 going into 2014. It was the first live show I worked. It was the first VIP production that I had done. I was the assistant production manager for that. So that was my introduction into not only the industry, but into this city. And let me tell you, I was addicted right off the bat. The first day, I was just enthralled. I loved the community. I'm a big hockey fan, but growing up in Wisconsin, we didn't have professional hockey. So it was like being on the rink that night while I was doing like t-shirt or like sweatshirt inventory. But, the Preds team is like walking past me and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing right now, but I love it. Yes. I absolutely love this. Like, it was 16-hour days. Your feet are bleeding at the end of the day. You sleep so soundly, but it was...
It's like an adrenaline rush.
I'm an adrenaline junkie, like through and through. It was an absolute addiction.
Last year, and I just actually had a call with another company for Bonnaroo this year, and I'm like, 16-hour days, like blood, sweat, and tears, being dirty. But I was like,
let's do it.
I love it. I'm addicted to it now.
I still every once in a while get offers to just drive golf carts at festivals, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna take a weekend off and go drive a golf cart. Like, that sounds amazing.
And it's magical.
It's so magical. But that was the first time I got to Nashville. I really fell in love with it, and I knew that after I graduated, that I was still in undergrad. I was a sophomore in undergrad at Wisconsin. And so I knew that I was a wee little one.
I know. That was forever ago.
I was 19 years old. I was not even 20. Like, it's been a whirlwind. So I knew that after I graduated and finished my education, I wanted to move here. Took a little bit longer of a route. Ended up getting my master's in grad school because I wanted to educate myself more in studio recording. And then once I got here, it just instantaneously felt like home. And I bought a home, my first house.
And Tony decide to move together? Like, was that... Or did he come after? Or?
I roped Tony into this.
The company or moving or all of it?
Both. All of it. We became fast friends at grad school, and we were BFFs. We I don't know what it was. He's my brother from another mother, and oh my God, I love his mother too. And she's the best. And I told him that I was coming down here, and I told him that I thought it was the best option for the music industry. LA was too expensive, and so was New York, and Nashville had more music industry professionals than New York and LA combined, or so I was told. And Austin, Texas was just too fucking hot. So I was like, dude,
I can see this list as you're making it.
Pros, cons, Nashville, clearly.
Too hot out.
Bye. I melt. I'm from Wisconsin, guys. I melt in the Tennessee summers already. I would die in Austin.
And you laugh in the Tennessee winters.
Oh my God, so much. It's snowing. Everything's shut down.
She's in a tank top right now. It's like 40 degrees outside.
We might have ice tomorrow. Cancel everything.
Oh my God, I love the snow days we get. But roping Tony in, I was like, I'm coming down here to Nashville. I'm doing this. You want to come with me? And he came down here, and we were actually working for a project music startup for a bit. And then we just kind of realized we should just go off on our own and keep focusing on Brain Candy and really putting our heads down when it came to Brain Candy management. And I think it really kind of started to pay off this past year. Midway through 2019, we actually started to get more traction, to sign more artists. We've had great artists that we've added to the roster these past month, and just starting to get more recognition, and people kind of know who we are now around town. We have a pretty identifiable red lollipop
Your
with
logo
the white stem.
is great.
It is.
Thank you. It was probably one of my favorite design projects ever. I didn't make it myself, full disclosure, but it was one of my favorite branding projects that I've ever gotten to witness, and I love that logo.
I was at your house and you showed me a couple of the other options that it could have been.
Yes.
And it makes so much sense. They were all so cute and fun, and the name itself is already really fun.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one more question about the music industry, because we do have people, aka my family and Julie's family.
What's up, Sierra? I know you're listening,
and
girl.
our close friends that are not in the industry. So
Yes.
I wanted your professional opinion of any myths about the industry that you want to debunk, or anything that people might think is true, or misconceptions of what the industry is actually like.
Well, I mean, I definitely hit on it a little bit earlier about patience and really being patient. But also, I think you talked about it a little bit before. People used to assume that you could get a record deal and that would be it. Like, you'd be fine. You sign the deal. You ink it with one of the majors. You've made it. Like, that's it. And it's definitely not it. The hard work never stops with this industry. You have to be, and this is something I tell all entrepreneurs, whether in music or in finance or in healthcare, you have to be extremely passionate about something in order to dedicate 40 plus hours. Because for an entrepreneur, and most likely for most musicians too, 40 is the minimum time that you can put in. You are a workaholic. So being patient, but also knowing that those standard norms of what we've assumed are the kind of caliber of making it, or like our standard definition of what is successful, is very, it can change from person to person. So don't just bank on
and
that.
also like sacrificing your social life and dating and things like that, especially as a woman, because it is harder for us. Because I think Marissa wrote a question down. Honestly, I barely looked at this because I've been so busy.
Exactly. You've been putting in
the work, not sleeping. Marissa called me yesterday. I swear, I was just like, yeah, I can't. Oh yeah, she wants me to do rapid fire questions.
Ooh.
So are you ready for that?
Let's do it.
Okay, all right. Where were you born?
Green Bay, Wisconsin.
College attended.
Wisconsin, the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Oh, so you went to Syracuse for just your master's.
Just my master's. Go UW. Let's
yeah.
make that one.
All right. Favorite spot in Nashville right now?
For what?
I don't know. That's all it says.
My house, home, my couch. There's an entrepreneurial social club opening up that's called The Register.
Oh.
And I absolutely love it. It's a swanky little joint, but it's also a co-working space. Check it out. That's probably one of my favorite spots. Otherwise, Bourbon Street Blues. It's my favorite bar in town.
Nice. Love that place. Go-to drink of choice.
Amaretto sour with a flip.
Yum. Okay. Weird skill you have or something others might not know about you.
I mean, I don't have any skills.
You paint?
I'm kidding.
Oh, you paint?
I paint. I wood carve. I'm very artistic.
You wood carve? I think that's pretty cool.
She's just making birdhouses over there. All right.
Carving structures out of wood.
Okay, so if the music industry doesn't work, I have a backup plan.
I'll be opening an Etsy store.
I like it.
Ayla Kress. All right, that's probably, all right, they don't sponsor us if that's a real person. Person you look up to right now, personally or professionally or both, besides me.
Ooh. Well, both of you. Yes. my big person that I've always looked up to has been Richard Branson since the get-go.
Yes.
I love Richard Branson, both professionally and personally, what he does as a brand, what he started opening up his record label, the manner in the way that he did. I read his blog. Every time he posts on it, I'm always reading, I'm always learning from him. But not only that, we share the very entrepreneurial spirit. I come from a family of sailors, and Branson is an avid sailor. I have
so many layers.
Interesting skill. I have my crewmanship paper. I can park an 88-foot boat, a sailboat.
Okay.
I can fully, I'm like legally, if you watch like Below Deck or any of those things, people have like their crewmanship papers. I have those papers. I spent a summer on a gaff schooner in college.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
I can't even touch my toes. All right, so.
But yeah, so Richard Branson, not only that, because he's a family man, he's a great guy. I love what him and Holly, his daughter, do together. My dad and I work on investment projects together, and so like being that daddy-daughter entrepreneur thing, it's just beautiful to me, and it makes me very excited. So Richard Branson, all the way, forever and ever, my biggest mentor.
Amazing. Amazing. All right, last one. Quote or theme you live by.
You don't stop laughing because you grow old. You grow old because you stop laughing.
Oh, I love that quote.
And I think laughing is the purest sign of joy. So be joyful and you won't get old. Always be a child.
That's our advice.
That is. There you go.
Be adult-ish. Only
Just a little.
ever. Just ish.
The adult. Yeah, there you go.
Ayla, thank you so much for
Love
being
you.
on our podcast.
Thank you for
seriously.
having
and for
me.
giving us our name.
You're
We
such an
owe everything
inspiration.
to you.
It is in a beautiful home.
Is
so
there
I'm
anything
so
you want to
excited.
plug before we say goodbye?
Yes. Where can they find your company's socials?
Ooh.
Any upcoming things for your artists?
Well, brain candy management. So as in your brain, what's in your head, and then candy, like what we give out at Halloween, brain candy, MGMT. That's all of our socials. You can find us.
Best of luck to you and Tony. Keep crushing it. You guys
you.
are. There's no stopping, no slowing
Killing
down
the
here.
national
So
scene,
we wish
for
you the best.
sure.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
And thank you guys. We'll see you next week.